For years, Princess Beatrice remained the quiet pillar of a family, constantly under scrutiny. But now, in a moment no one saw coming, she steps forward, her voice steady, yet carrying the weight of something devastating. What she reveals about her mother, Sarah Ferguson, isn't just shocking, it threatens to unravel everything the public thought they knew. And behind her composed exterior lies a truth so painful, it changes the royal narrative forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The timing of her words is what first sent shockwaves through royal circles. There had been no grand announcement, no carefully staged appearance, no strategic leak to soften the impact. Instead, it arrived with an almost startling abruptness, as though Beatrice had reached a breaking point, where silence was no longer protection, but complicity. For someone who has built her entire public identity around discretion, around loyalty, around shielding her family from further controversy, this decision feels seismic. Why now? Why risk reopening wounds that had only just begun to scar over? Those questions linger heavily, suggesting that whatever compelled her forward was not impulsive but inevitable. Beatrice has always understood the power of restraint. In a monarchy where every gesture is dissected and every word weaponized, she mastered the art of saying little while meaning much. That is precisely why this moment resonates so deeply. Her voice did not tremble, yet there was a subtle strain beneath it, a careful control that hinted at nights spent wrestling with doubt. Observers noted the pauses, the deliberate pacing, the way certain phrases seemed to cost her more than others. These were not the marks of someone chasing attention. They were the quiet signals of someone carrying something far heavier than public scrutiny. And then there is the silence. The palace has offered no immediate clarification, no swift endorsement, no subtle distancing, just silence. In royal language, silence is rarely neutral. It amplifies. It confirms that something delicate, perhaps volatile, sits at the heart of this revelation. Insiders, speaking in hushed tones, suggest that tensions long buried beneath carefully choreographed unity have been simmering for years. Not explosive arguments or dramatic confrontations, but something quieter, more corrosive. A fracture formed not from scandal alone, nor from health scares, but from truths left unspoken. What makes Beatrice's statement even more unsettling is what it does not explicitly say. She does not detail betrayal. She does not accuse. She does not defend. Instead, she alludes. She frames her mother not as a figure of tabloid caricature, but as a woman shaped by forces the public never fully understood. There is an undercurrent of protection in her tone, but also reckoning. It suggests that the narrative surrounding Sarah Ferguson may have been incomplete, perhaps even deliberately simplified, for far too long. And if that narrative shifts, the ripple effect will not stop with one duchess. Because this is no longer just about health updates or past controversies, it feels like the prelude to something deeper, a reframing of history itself. A daughter stepping forward not to scandalize, but to challenge the version of events the world has comfortably accepted. And as the royal family remains outwardly composed, the tension only thickens, hinting that the truth Beatrice carries may reach far beyond personal pain and into the very foundation of loyalty and legacy. But to understand the magnitude of Beatrice's words, we must go back far beyond this moment, to the woman at the center of it all. Once the vibrant, rebellious duchess who captured headlines and hearts alike, Sarah Ferguson's journey has always been anything but ordinary. From royal fairy tale to public downfall, and then an unexpected resurgence, her life reads like a script no one could predict. But beneath the laughter and resilience, there were whispers, shadows that never truly faded. And now, those shadows seem to be closing in. When Sarah first stepped into royal life, she did not glide in with icy precision or rehearsed elegance. She arrived with warmth, humor, and a kind of unfiltered energy that both charmed and unsettled the establishment. She was not molded by palace corridors. She was shaped by freedom, friendship, and a stubborn refusal to shrink herself. To many, she felt refreshingly human in a world of ritual and restraint. Crowds adored her spontaneity. Children gravitated toward her laughter. For a brief, glittering moment, she seemed to breathe new life into a monarchy often criticized for its distance. Yet even in those early triumphs, There was tension humming beneath the surface, a quiet discomfort with how easily she bent the rules without appearing to break them. The media, of course, took notice. What began as fascination soon sharpened into scrutiny. Her affection was labelled excessive. Her missteps became front-page spectacles, where others were described as composed. She was branded reckless. Every holiday photograph, every candid exchange, every perceived deviation from protocol fed a narrative that she was too much, too emotional, too outspoken, too alive for an institution built on control. The irony was brutal. The very qualities that made her magnetic were recast as liabilities, and as headlines grew harsher, the pressure inside her marriage intensified, tightening, like a vice no one publicly acknowledged. Scandal did not arrive all at once. It crept in, first as rumor, then as evidence, then as undeniable fracture. Tabloids feasted, reducing complex human struggles to caricature and condemnation. Her separation from Prince Andrew became more than a personal heartbreak. It became public theatre. The fairy tale dissolved under relentless flashbulbs and whispered betrayal. Trust eroded, reputations shifted. And with each exposed vulnerability, the Duchess who once laughed so freely found herself fighting to protect what little dignity remained. The monarchy distanced itself carefully, neither fully embracing nor entirely discarding her. She became suspended between belonging and exile. Behind the headlines, another battle unfolded, quieter but no less devastating. Financial troubles mounted, questionable business ventures surfaced, dissociations were dissected with forensic intensity. Critics called her careless, supporters called her desperate to survive outside the palace walls. The truth, as always, was more complicated. She was navigating independence without a royal safety net, balancing motherhood, debt, and a reputation already bruised. Decisions made in moments of pressure would follow her for years, reinforcing the idea that she could never quite escape her past. Each attempt to regain footing seemed shadowed by another controversy waiting to erupt, and yet, against expectation, she endured. She wrote books. She spoke openly about resilience and reinvention. Gradually, public hostility softened into reluctant admiration. There was something undeniably compelling about her refusal to disappear. She rebuilt relationships within the family, re-established a measure of public goodwill, and presented herself as a woman tempered by experience rather than broken by it. It felt, for a time, like redemption, like a second act no one had predicted, but many were willing to applaud. But beneath the polished views and carefully chosen words, subtle contradictions lingered. Old alliances resurfaced in uncomfortable ways. Lingering debts, emotional and otherwise, were never fully addressed. The reconciliation with royal life appeared harmonious, yet insiders hinted at unresolved strain, at conversations postponed rather than resolved. The laughter returned, yes, but it carried an undertone, something guarded, something bracing for impact. And as the public began to believe the storm had passed, those closest to her sensed that the calm was fragile, perhaps even temporary. And while the world saw a woman rebuilding her life, those closest to her were witnessing something far more troubling. Behind closed doors, away from flashing cameras and public appearances, a different story was unfolding, one that few were allowed to see. Those closest to Sarah Ferguson began noticing subtle changes, moments of silence where there once was laughter, signs that something deeper, more unsettling, was quietly taking hold, and yet no one dared to speak openly until now. At first, the shifts were almost imperceptible. A missed call returned hours later with a distracted tone, a family gathering cut short with an excuse that sounded rehearsed. Sarah had always been resilient, almost defiantly so, capable of turning humiliation into humor and setbacks into reinvention, but this felt different. The brightness that once defined her seemed to flicker unpredictably. She would drift mid-conversation, her thoughts somewhere unreachable, her responses measured in a way that suggested calculation rather than spontaneity. To outsiders, she remained composed. To her daughters, something fragile was forming beneath that composure. Beatrice and Eugenie had grown up watching their mother withstand storms that would have broken others. They had seen her vilified, mocked, doubted, and still stand tall. That Tory made the present changes harder to name. Was this exhaustion lingering stress from years of scrutiny, or something more profound? Beatrice, especially, began to notice how often her mother withdrew from invitations she once would have embraced. Public engagements became selective, private dinners shortened. Phone conversations ended with reassurances that felt more like deflections. The emotional temperature in the room shifted, subtle but undeniable. Insiders within palace circles, trained to detect the faintest tremor in royal stability, started exchanging cautious observations. There were reports of cancelled appearances attributed to personal reasons, meetings postponed without explanation. The official line remained calm, almost dismissive. But beneath that calm was an undercurrent of concern. Maintaining the monarchy's image has always required careful choreography, and when one figure begins to move out of step, even slightly, the entire rhythm feels threatened. Yet no statement was issued, no clarification offered. Silence once again became the chosen shield. The strain began to seep into relationships. Conversations between mother and daughters grew heavier, less playful. Beatrice found herself navigating a delicate balance, offering support without confrontation, asking questions without triggering retreat. There were moments when Sarah would open up, hinting at pressures that felt relentless, expectations that had never truly loosened their grip. And then, just as quickly, she would pivot, insisting she was fine, insisting she had survived worse. That insistence carried a sharp edge, as if admitting vulnerability might unravel something carefully held together. Behind the scenes, efforts were made to preserve normalcy. Public smiles remained intact. Carefully chosen appearances projected strength. Statements were crafted to reassure without revealing, but the effort itself spoke volumes. The more energy spent protecting the narrative, the more obvious it became that the narrative required protection. Tension mounted quietly, like a storm gathering beyond closed windows. The contrast was stark, a woman celebrated for resilience now appearing guarded, almost burdened by an invisible weight, and in that growing divide between the image presented and the reality unfolding, Beatrice felt the shift most intensely. Loyalty urged discretion. Love demanded honesty. Each passing week deepened the unease, sharpening the sense that this was not a passing phase, but the crest of something far more consequential. The quest was no longer whether something was wrong, but how long it could remain unspoken. And it was within this atmosphere of quiet concern that Princess Beatrice began to confront a truth she could no longer ignore. Before she stood before the world, Princess Beatrice was fighting a battle no cameras captured. Torn between loyalty, love, and an unbearable truth, she carried a burden that would test even the strongest hearts. Every decision she made felt like walking a tightrope between protecting her mother and preparing for what might come next. And in that silent struggle, everything began to change. For years, Beatrice had been the steady presence in a family accustomed to turbulence. Not the loudest voice, not the most controversial, but the one who absorbed tension and translated it into calm. When storms gathered, she became the emotional anchor fielding concerned calls, smoothing over misunderstandings, offering reassurance that felt unshakable, even when she herself was uncertain. It was a role she never formally accepted, yet somehow always fulfilled. And as her mother's quiet transformation deepened, that role grew heavier, more consuming. Witnessing decline is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is subtle, stretched over months, disguised as fatigue or stress. For Beatrice, the toll was psychological before it was anything else. She began second-guessing every interaction. Was that hesitation meaningful? Was that distant reply a sign of something more serious? She replayed conversations in her mind long after they ended, searching for hidden signals. The daughter in her wanted to believe this was temporary. The woman she had become understood that denial could be dangerous. And in that tension between hope and intuition, her composure began to fracture in private. Behind palace doors, conversations turned difficult. There were moments when she tried to approach T. He subject gently, framing her concern as care rather than alarm. Sometimes her mother responded with honesty that felt raw and unguarded. Other times, the walls went up instantly, firm assurances that everything was under control, that resilience had always been her strength. Those exchanges left Beatrice emotionally drained. She was not confronting scandal or rebellion. She was confronting vulnerability, something far more fragile and far less predictable. Complicating it all was the chorus of conflicting advice surrounding her. Royal advisors urged caution. The institution thrives on stability, and public acknowledgement of internal strain carries risks that ripple outward. Close confidence, however, whispered a different warning. Silence can become complicity. Protecting someone's image may inadvertently protect the problem itself. Beatrice found herself suspended between these opposing currents: duty to the crown on one side, duty to her mother on the other. Each conversation tightened the knot in her chest. Each delay felt like borrowed time. As weeks passed, a realization began to crystallize with painful clarity. The carefully maintained facade was no longer sustainable. The effort required to shield the public narrative was draining energy from the very relationships it sought to protect. Beatrice saw the cost in fleeting expressions, in unfinished sentences, in the emotional distance widening despite everyone's best intentions. The truth, however uncomfortable, was pressing closer, and she understood something that terrified her. Remaining silent might preserve appearances, but it would not preserve the person she loved. The decision to step forward did not come in a burst of defiance. It came quietly, a moment of stillness after yet another conversation left unresolved. A recognition that leadership sometimes means risking backlash to prevent deeper harm. She did not crave exposure. She did not seek sympathy. What she sought was clarity, a breaking of the unspoken tension that had wrapped itself around their lives. And once that internal line was crossed, there was no retreating to comfortable ambiguity, because speaking would not just alter headlines, it would shift dynamics within the family itself. It would force acknowledgement where there had been avoidance. It would invite scrutiny at a time when scrutiny felt unbearable. Yet, in her heart, the alternative felt worse, and when she finally spoke, the words she chose would send shockwaves far beyond royal walls. When Princess Beatrice finally broke her silence, the world stopped. Her words weren't vague, nor were they softened for public comfort. They were raw, direct, and devastating. In a single moment, she confirmed what many feared but none could prove, and as the reality of her statement began to sink in, it became clear. This wasn't just a family matter, it was a turning point that would redefine everything. She did not hide behind carefully polished phrases or institutional language. Instead, she spoke with deliberate clarity, revealing that her mother's struggle was far more serious than anyone outside their inner circle had understood. This was not a passing exhaustion, not a temporary retreat from public life. It was a profound personal crisis, one that had been quietly escalating behind composed smiles and reassuring headlines. The weight of her admission shattered the illusion that resilience alone could carry them through. In acknowledging the depth of the situation, Beatrice dismantled months, perhaps years, of carefully constructed reassurance. There was an unmistakable tremor beneath her control, not of weakness, but of emotional cost. Each sentence felt earned, pulled from nights of private reckoning. She spoke of fear without dramatics, of uncertainty without embellishment, of love without defensiveness. And in doing so, she transformed speculation into reality. The devastating truth was no longer confined to whispers within palace corridors. It was spoken aloud, irreversible. She made it clear that what her mother faced would require time, privacy, and strength beyond what public narratives had allowed. It was both a plea for understanding and a quiet acknowledgement that the road ahead would not be simple. The global reaction was immediate and intense. Shock rippled across headlines. Commentators who once dismissed concerns now recalibrated their tone. Support poured in, but so did disbelief. Many struggled to reconcile the vibrant duchess they thought they knew with the gravity described by her daughter. Social media ignited with analysis, sympathy, and relentless speculation. For every message of compassion, there was a theory probing for hidden causes, for overlooked signs, for someone to blame. The story evolved from a personal disclosure into an international reckoning with how public figures are perceived and misperceived. Within hours, the royal family issued a response measured to the word. It expressed solidarity, emphasized privacy, and underscored the importance of unity. There were no elaborate details, no dramatic confirmations beyond what had already been shared. The tone was steady, almost restrained, reflecting an institution determined to project stability even as uncertainty churned beneath the surface. That restraint spoke volumes. It suggested coordination, caution, and perhaps an understanding that the full truth was still too delicate to place entirely in the public domain. Meanwhile, the media frenzy intensified overnight. Archived interviews were revisited, past cancellations re-examined. Every subtle shift in Sarah's recent appearances was reframed as potential evidence of a deeper struggle. Analysts, T-side dissected Beatrice's phrasing, searching for implications hidden between her lines. Because beyond confirmation of crisis, there was something else embedded in her words, an undercurrent hinting that this revelation was not solely about health or personal hardship. There were references to pressures, to prolonged strain, to systemic expectations that had compounded the burden. It raised a troubling possibility. Had the very machinery of royal life contributed to what was now unfolding? Perhaps most powerful was what Beatrice chose not to say. She did not assign fault, she did not detail private conversations, she did not expose the internal debates that had preceded her decision to speak. But silence, in certain places, echoed louder than accusation. The gaps invited interpretation. They suggested complexities still shielded, truths not yet ready for daylight. And in that delicate balance between disclosure and discretion, the narrative shifted from revelation to mystery once more. Because while her statement confirmed a devastating reality, it also opened doors to new uncertainties. It reframed past events in unsettling ways and forced a reconsideration of how strength, image, and vulnerability intersect within the monarchy. The world had received its answer, but answers, in this case, only multiplied the questions. But as the public tried to process the revelation, questions began to surface, questions that hinted at an even deeper story. In the aftermath of Beatrice's announcement, one thing became painfully clear. The palace wasn't telling the whole story. Carefully worded statements, controlled appearances, and a noticeable absence of key figures only fueled suspicion. What was being hidden, and why now? As whispers turned into theories, the silence from royal insiders became louder than any official statement. The official response had been polished to perfect. She measured, sympathetic, unwaveringly composed. It spoke of unity, privacy, and strength. But beneath that calm exterior, contradictions began to surface. Insiders quietly suggested that the severity of the situation had been known for longer than the public was led to believe. Certain engagements had been rearranged months earlier. Private meetings had reportedly taken place behind tightly sealed doors, and yet the narrative presented to the world implied a sudden development, an unforeseen escalation. The gap between those timelines did not go unnoticed. Observers also pointed to the strategic absence of particular royal figures in the days following the revelation. Appearances that would traditionally signal solidarity were either delayed or subtly restructured. Statements of support were issued, but some voices remained conspicuously quiet. In royal tradition, presence is power, and absence is a message. Whether intentional or circumstantial, it stirred unease. Was this simply a matter of scheduling or evidence of deeper disagreements about how the crisis should be handled? Meanwhile, media narratives began to shift almost imperceptibly. Initial headlines centered on compassion and concern, but as hours turned into days, the focus edged toward scrutiny. Commentators revisited past tensions within the family, reframing them through the lens of Beatrice's disclosure. Stories once dismissed as exaggerated suddenly felt relevant again. Patterns emerged, moments of visible strain, public distancing, unexplained cancellations that now seemed less coincidental. It was as though the revelation had unlocked a new framework through which every prior event could be reinterpreted. Long-standing fractures within the broader royal structure resurfaced in this new context. Relationships that had endured years of quiet strain were now viewed with renewed skepticism. Had disagreements over public image and private reality been simmering beneath the surface all along? Was Beatrice's decision to speak a personal act of courage or a subtle challenge to an institution that prioritizes stability over transparency? The monarchy's reliance on protocol, on controlled messaging, and calculated silence suddenly appeared both protective and restrictive. Royal protocol, after all, is designed to preserve continuity. It smooths over turmoil, absorbs controversy, and ensures that individual struggles do not destabilize the crown. But in doing so, it can also obscure complexity. Beatrice's statement disrupted that machinery. It pierced the carefully maintained veil and introduced raw humanity into a system built on composure. The palace's restrained follow-up suggested an attempt to regain narrative control, to contain the fallout before speculation spiraled beyond reach. Yet the very effort to contain it only intensified curiosity, because questions lingered. Was the crisis purely personal, or had external pressures exacerbated it? Were there internal disagreements about seeking help, about stepping back, about redefining roles within the royal framework? The absence of detailed clarification left space for theories to thrive. And in that vacuum, suspicion grew roots. The more tightly the institution held its silence, the louder the conjecture became. This was no longer just about a duchess facing hardship. It had evolved into a broader inquiry about transparency, responsibility, and the cost of maintaining an immaculate public facade. Every carefully chosen word, every withheld detail, carried new weight, and as the world dissected each nuance, the family at the center of it all felt the pressure intensify from every direction, and as speculation intensified, the emotional toll on the family began to show in ways no one could ignore. Behind the panned grandeur of royal life lies a family fragile, human, and now under immense strain. The weight of Beatrice's revelation didn't just affect one person, it rippled through every relationship, exposing cracks that had long been hidden. And as the pressure mounted, it became clear that this wasn't just about Sarah Ferguson. It was about the future of the family itself. In the immediate aftermath, the bond between Beatrice and Eugenie was tested in ways neither had anticipated. United by loyalty to their mother, they were nevertheless shaped by different instincts. Beatrice had chosen confrontation measured but unmistakable. Eugenie, more private by nature, wrestled with the consequences of that choice. There were late-night conversations thick with emotion, moments of fierce agreement followed by uneasy silence. Both wanted protection, both wanted honesty. But the path toward those goals was no longer aligned. Love held them together, yet strategy pulled them in separate directions. Extended family members, too, found themselves divided. Some believed Beatrice's transparency had been necessary, even brave. Others feared it had opened doors that could not easily be closed. Within royal circles, crisis management is almost an art form: contain, recalibrate, endure. But this situation resisted containment. It was deeply personal, layered with history and pride. Old disagreements about public exposure versus private endurance resurfaced with renewed intensity. Conversations once resolved through compromise now felt sharper, as if the stakes had quietly doubled. At the center of this emotional storm stood Prince Andrew, a figure already entangled in his own controversies. His role in the unfolding situation carried both weight and complication. As Sarah's former husband and the father of her daughters, his instinct was to shield. Yet his presence also attracted scrutiny, that risk overshadowing the issue at hand. Support from him could be interpreted as solidarity or as distraction. That delicate balance added another layer of strain, forcing the family to navigate not only vulnerability, but optics. Every gesture mattered. Every public alignment was dissected. Public attentions amplified tensions that might otherwise have remained manageable. Each headline became a pressure point. Speculation about internal disagreements fueled narratives of division. The family, already grappling with private uncertainty, now had to perform unity under relentless observation. There were moments when solidarity shone through shared appearances, coordinated statements, subtle acknowledgements of mutual support. But alongside those gestures were quieter signs of distance. Delayed responses, carefully limited interactions, and unspoken hesitance that observers were quick to interpret. Old wounds, long sealed but never fully healed, began to reopen. Past grievances about media handling, about institutional loyalty, about who had stood beside whom in previous crises, all resurfaced in hushed discussions. The revelation had not created these fractures, it had illuminated them, and illumination can be as destabilizing as the damage itself. Beatrice felt the burden of that reality acutely. Her decision had been rooted in love, yet it had triggered consequences that extended far beyond her original intention. Still, amid the tension, there were undeniable signs of resilience. Moments when disagreements softened into shared purpose, when personal pride gave way to collective concern. The family understood, perhaps more clearly than ever, that their strength would be measured not by flawless image, but by their capacity to endure discomfort together. Whether that endurance would lead to deeper unity or lasting division remained uncertain, because as the emotional strain intensified, one truth hovered over every interaction. This crisis was evolving. It was not static, not contained within a single statement or response. The choices made in these fragile days would shape relationships for years to come. Yet even as the family struggled to hold itself together, the public's attention shifted to one haunting question: what happens next? As the dust begins to settle, the question remains, what does the future hold? For Sarah Ferguson, for Princess Beatrice, and for a family now forever changed. The revelation has left more than just shock in its wake. It has forced a reckoning. And as the world watches closely, every move, every silence, carries a weight that cannot be ignored. The long-term implications are only beginning to take shape. What was once a contained personal struggle has now become part of the royal record, impossible to retract or quietly redefine. For Sarah, the path ahead is no longer about reclaiming image or rewriting headlines. It is about endurance in its most vulnerable form. Public sympathy has deepened, replacing old caricatures with something more human, more complex. Yet sympathy is fragile. It can evolve into scrutiny just as quickly. The question lingers. Will this moment solidify her legacy as a woman of resilience, or will it reopen chapters many believed were finally closed? Public perception has undeniably shifted. The once rebellious Duchess is now seen through a softer, more contemplative lens. The laughter that once defined her is remembered with affection, but also with a hint of sadness, as if the world now recognizes the cost behind it. Her past controversies feel less sensational and more contextual threads in a tapestry of pressure, expectation, and relentless exposure. And yet, admiration does not erase uncertainty. There remains an undercurrent of curiosity about what else may surface, what complexities remain undisclosed beneath the carefully managed updates. For Beatrice, this moment marks a transformation. She is no longer simply the steady daughter standing quietly in support. She has stepped into a role far more consequential, one that blends personal devotion with public responsibility. Her voice carries new authority, not because of title, but because of courage. With that authority comes expectation. Will she continue to challenge the boundaries of royal silence? Will she reshape how vulnerability is addressed within the institution? Her evolving presence suggests a generational shift, subtle but significant, in how the monarchy confronts crisis. The emotional aftermath within the family cannot be overstated. The immediate tension may soften with time, but its imprint will remain. Trust has been tested, not broken, perhaps, but stretched. Conversations once avoided must now be faced directly. Roles may shift quietly, responsibilities distributed in ways that reflect both necessity and adaptation. The monarchy has always relied on continuity, on the seamless transition of duty from one chapter to the next. But continuity does not mean stagnation. This revelation may quietly alter how future challenges are handled, how transparency is weighed against tradition. Still, uncertainty lingers like a shadow that refuses to fade. There are details yet unspoken, layers not fully revealed. The public has been given clarity, but not completion. And in that incomplete narrative lies both protection and risk, because unanswered questions have a way of resurfacing, especially in an institution built on history and perception. The family stands at a crossroads, balancing privacy with expectation, healing with performance. Each step forward will be measured not just by intention, but by intentionation, but by interpretation. For Sarah, for Beatrice, and for the monarchy itself, this is not Meryl. Why the closing of a difficult chapter? It is the beginning of a new, uncharted phase, one shaped by honesty, vulnerability, and the undeniable truth that even the most storied families are not immune to fracture. The world will continue watching, analyzing, waiting for signs of stability or further revelation. And perhaps the most chilling part of all is the realization that this story may not be over yet. Just when it seemed the truth had finally been revealed, a new question emerges: was this really everything, or just the beginning of something far more complex? As new whispers surface and subtle clues begin to connect, one thing becomes undeniable: the story of Sarah Ferguson and Princess Beatrice is far from over, and what lies ahead may be even more shocking than what has already been revealed. In the days following the emotional fallout, a strange quiet settled in a quiet too deliberate to feel natural. Official updates slowed, public appearances were measured, almost restrained. And yet, beneath that calm surface, unanswered questions continued to swirl. What exactly had triggered the turning point Beatrice described? How long had the family truly known? And why did certain details feel carefully framed rather than fully illuminated? The absence of specifics became its own presence, hovering at the edges of every discussion. Theories began to circulate with growing confidence. Some suggested that external pressures had played a larger role than anyone was willing to admit. Others pointed toward internal tensions that had never been fully resolved, now resurfacing under the strain of crisis. Analysts revisited timelines, comparing past statements with present revelations, searching for inconsistencies. Each subtle shift in language was dissected. Each pause during interviews was replayed. The public was no longer simply absorbing information, it was investigating it. More intriguing still were the small, almost imperceptible hints that something else lingered beneath the surface. Carefully chosen words in palace briefings, a phrase about ongoing conversations, a reference to future clarity, these were not accidental. In royal communication, language is precise. If there were doors firmly closed, they would have been declared so. Instead, what emerged was ambiguity controlled, but unmistakable, and ambiguity breeds anticipation. There is also the undeniable possibility of future disclosures. Beatrice's decision to speak once has altered the landscape. It proved that silence, even within the most tradition-bound institution, can be broken. If circumstances evolve, if new developments arise, would she step forward again? Would Sarah herself choose to reclaim her narrative in a more direct way? The idea no longer feels impossible. In fact, it feels increasingly plausible, and that possibility alone keeps the story alive. Emotionally, the weight of unresolved truth is heavy. For the family, living under constant scrutiny while holding back certain realities must feel like walking through fog, aware of shapes ahead, but unable to define them publicly. For Beatrice, the burden is layered. She has opened the door to honesty, but not all the way. That in-between space, between revelation and restraint, can be the most exhausting of all. It demands vigilance, it demands patience, and it demands faith that timing will eventually align with truth. Perhaps what lingers most is the haunting sense that this chapter is incomplete. Not because of deception, but because of protection. Protection of privacy, of dignity, of stability. Yet history has shown that in royal life, protected stories rarely remain untouched forever. Time has a way of loosening sealed narratives. What feels contained today can resurface tomorrow with sharper clarity. And so the world waits not for spectacle, but for understanding. Watching subtle signals, listening for shifts in tone, wondering whether the revelation we witnessed was an ending, or merely the opening act of something deeper still unfolding. Because in the world of royalty, the most powerful stories are never fully told, only slowly uncovered. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.